One of the questions I keep getting asked by people is, Drinker, what's the best way to dispose of a body so nobody will ever find it? Wait, what? The other big question that people tend to ask is, Drinker, I'm an aspiring author with a great book that I'd love to get published. What's the best way to make it happen? And rather than keep responding to every single one of these questions individually while slowly losing my sanity, I figured it would be easier to just make a video on the subject and direct people to that instead. So for what it's worth, here's the Drinker's 3-step process for how to get published. Step 1. Finish the fucking book. It might sound like an obvious one, but you'd be surprised how many people fuck this step up, myself included. See, back in the heady days of 2011, when I was trying to get my first publishing deal, I made the mistake of submitting an unfinished manuscript on the assumption it would be weeks, if not months, before anyone even took a look at it. Plenty of time to get the thing finished and polished up. Or so I thought. It turns out that more than one editor really liked the samples that I'd sent them, and within a matter of days, they emailed me back requesting the entire manuscript, which was a bit of a problem because it wasn't even close to being finished.
Not a great plan.
This resulted in me having to stall them while I desperately tried to finish the last 100 pages in a single fucking weekend. Not exactly my finest hour, but there you go. I did it so you don't have to. The key lesson you should take from this moment of literary retardation is to make sure your book is finished and written to the highest standard possible before you do anything else. Generally, it helps to set a writing schedule and stick to it as much as possible. Writing a book is a marathon rather than a sprint, so you need to pace yourself to make sure you don't falter or burn out in the process. Try to avoid leaving long gaps between writing sessions, otherwise you'll lose your creative momentum, and believe me, it's pretty fucking difficult to get it going again. Much as you might be tempted to take a couple of days off, a couple of days can easily turn into a week. Believe me. And before you know it, a month's come and gone, and you've lost all sense of what you were doing with your story, and you've got less and less interest in getting back into it. At the same time, be very wary of creative burnout. Not only is writing a book a lengthy process, but it's also a pretty lonely one, and no matter how invested you are in the story, there's going to be times when it's just going to feel like a total grind. Maybe your motivation is kind of low, maybe you're on a slow part of the story, or maybe the ideas just aren't coming as easily as they used to. If that happens, take a break for a while. Go for a walk, go to the gym, go to a fucking strip club. Whatever you do, get away from your computer for a while. And when you come back, think about why you've been struggling. For me, these kinds of problems usually creep in when I'm trying to bend the plot around what I need it to do, instead of reworking it to making it flow more logically. Your subconscious is a lot more powerful than you give it credit for, and if you're struggling to find a way forward with your story, it's more than likely your subconscious mind trying to warn you that what you're doing just isn't working. Anyway, assuming you make it to the point where you're happy with your manuscript, it's time to find someone to represent you, which brings me along to step 2, find a literary agent. See, you can't just submit your work directly to a book publisher anymore. They're not interested and they won't accept it, because otherwise they'd get buried under a tidal wave of manuscripts from a million wannabe authors. What you need instead is a literary agent to bridge that gap. A good agent will usually have personal relationships with editors at most of the big publishing houses. They'll know what kinds of books particular publishers are looking for, they'll know how to sell first-timers like you as the next J.K. Rowling, and they'll know how to negotiate a decent contract for you so you don't end up getting screwed over further down the line. In short, finding a good agent is the single most important thing you can do as an author. So where the fuck do you get one? Well, Google is very much your friend here. There's plenty of online directories of literary agents in your particular country, so look up the ones that you think will be a good match for your work. They should each list the kind of genres they specialise in, so obviously you don't want to go submitting your epic fantasy series to an agent that specialises in romantic fiction. Also, I'd avoid submitting to agents in a different country. If you live in the UK, for example, don't go submitting your work to a big agency in New York thinking it's going to be your ticket to the big time. They probably won't be interested in foreign authors. Anyway, when you find some that seem like a good fit, it's time to start submitting your work to them. Now, agents can take quite a while to reply, and some of them won't even bother, so feel free to submit to multiple agencies at the same time. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but just make sure you make them aware of it, otherwise they might think you're trying to pull a fast one on them. Now, most of these guys get dozens, if not hundreds of manuscripts a week, so as you can imagine, they're pretty ruthless when it comes to vetting potential new authors. Most of them won't even bother to read beyond the first 5 or 10 pages, so needless to say, you should probably aim to start strong with your book. If your story doesn't grab them right away, then it'll go straight into the garbage and it won't be coming back. Also, you'll probably need to write a covering letter telling them a little bit about yourself, your relevant experiences, and why you chose to write the book. It's a bit like applying for a job. Not only are you trying to sell your book, but in a lot of ways, you're trying to sell yourself as well. The aim is to paint yourself as the kind of exciting, interesting, and charismatic person that they would want to work with for years, even decades. The kind of author they can eventually build into a brand. Keep the covering letter clear and concise. Don't waffle or try to be cute and quirky. Nobody really wants to hear your shitty jokes, but what they do want to hear is interesting life experience that they can sell to publishers. So for example, if you're a military vet with combat experience writing about the war in Afghanistan, you'll stand a much better chance than Joe Average, whose only military experience is yelling abuse at sweaty teenagers on Call of Duty. Also, and there's no easy way to say this, you should be prepared to get rejections. Lots of rejections, usually in the shape of a generic form email. It happens and it's usually not personal, so don't take it that way. The reality is, maybe they already signed someone just like you. Maybe your sample writing didn't stand out in the way you'd hoped. Maybe the agent didn't see the potential in your story, or maybe they were just having a bad fucking day. It could be any one of these reasons or none of them, but the fact is, most agents only take on a handful of clients per year out of hundreds or even thousands of hopefuls, so try not to get too discouraged. Having said that though, try to be pragmatic about it as well. If you've sent out dozens or even hundreds of emails and gotten absolutely nowhere, it's probably a good time to start asking yourself some harsh questions, such as, is this book really as good as I think it is? Is the writing up to scratch? Is the subject matter just not very interesting? Does it stand out from the hundreds of other hopefuls out there? Do I need to get some honest opinions from other readers? Whatever happens at this stage, one thing I can't emphasize enough is to be polite and professional at all times, even if the people you're dealing with totally aren't. Agents tend to move in the same circles, word gets around, and the last thing you want is to get a reputation as a total asshole before your career's even started. Needless to say though, what you're really hoping for here is a positive response. If an agent likes you and your work and they think they've got potential, then they'll probably send a request for the rest of your manuscripts. And if they like that too, then they may just offer to represent you.
Yes!
Another thing that I should probably emphasise at this stage is that agents make all of their money through commission on the publishing deals that they negotiate. Usually it's between 15 and 20%, so be wary of anyone who falls way outside this bracket. Not through any kind of upfront payment from their authors, so if any agent asks to charge a fee to represent you, walk away and do not look back. These are total fucking scam artists with no real connections who probably won't do a thing for you. Also avoid anyone who offers the services of a book doctor or a professional editor for a small fee. All of this stuff should be done free of charge. Most agents come from an editing background and they'll use those skills to help you polish up your book and make it as strong as it possibly can be before they start submitting it. Which brings me along to the last major hurdle. Step 3. Find a publisher. The good news is that most of this is down to your agent. The bad news is that it can still go wrong even at the last minute. Publishers are generally pretty wary about taking on new, unproven authors with no track record behind them, so they tend to be very selective about who they take on. That being said, deep down everyone hopes to be the one to discover the next Stephen King or J.K. Rowling, so there's always a chance. Also, they're not going to want just one good book out of you, they want some reassurance that you can keep delivering quality stories for years to come, ideally as part of a series that they can build into a brand. Notice how I keep using that word? Well, get used to it because writing is a business, and part of that business is being able to churn out reliable quality material. So if you've got plans outlined for future novels, don't be afraid to let them know about it. A book submission also has to go through lots of different people and lots of stages, all of whom have to approve it before they'll offer you a publishing contract. And like I say, it can go wrong even at the final stage. I've had a book that got rave reviews from everyone who read it in a particular publishing house, only for some asshole in a boardroom to put the brakes on it during the final approval meeting because he didn't quite get it. Just like with agents, it's a total pain in the arse when this happens, and it's often pretty unfair, but there it is. That's the nature of the business. Just like with acting, for every A-lister who makes it to the very top, there's a million wannabes who never even got an audition. But if you're very lucky, if the gods are smiling on you and your agent's able to do their job properly, then the publishers may just make you an offer. In which case, congratulations sir, you're now a published author. That was easy, wasn't it?
You serious?
As you probably gathered from this video, there's a lot of hurdles to cross to get to this point. The sad fact is, most aspiring authors never even finish the book they're working on, and for those that do, barely 1 in every 100 manage to find an agent to represent them, and out of those, maybe 1 in 10 will actually land a publishing deal, and for those select few, only a tiny fraction will go on to become best-selling authors. The other sad reality of being a writer is that most professional authors, even ones with regular publishing deals, make less than the minimum wage each year, which I know isn't exactly what you want to hear right now, but as much as I'm a cynical, drunken asshole, one thing I hate is the idea of misleading people into wasting their time and energy on something that totally isn't going to be worth it. Anyway, that's all I can think to say right now. There's probably more I could go into about what happens next and how the publishing industry works once you're in it, but this video is already pretty long, so it's best to leave it there for next time. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.